a key to work that into the overall planning. And we've talked about this in prior sessions, but it can be a foundational tool that can work alongside of a lot of other things to address the tax implications that they have with moving forward and doing the right thing with their planning, and maybe taking a little bit more passive position for some if they're older and want to slow down, or maybe take a more active position, just a more tax-friendly active position when moving forward if they're younger.
Very good, Jake. Well, and of course, here's the funniest thing ever. One of the tax attorneys is also a Jake. And so occasionally in a meeting, we are Jake cubed, right? Yeah. So we're going to make a rule. You have to be Jake to play ball. Anyway.
But have you also had a client named Jake with all of you in the room at the same time?
That's going to happen this year.
That will, yes. We're going to take a photo, we're going to post it, we're going to let everybody know what's going on, and the fact that pretty much that doesn't happen anywhere else. Very good.
I'm wondering, Jake, if you could address those of us that may have a situation where the sale is taking place outside the country, let's say Ghana, West Africa.
Okay. Well, whether it's Ghana, West Africa, or Germany. So we had a case just like this. And it's important to realize that a lot of times it depends on US treaty with other countries on how taxes are handled oftentimes. But I'll give you the general case of what happens. We had a client with property. Well, he was an heir. They were going to receive an inheritance, but how they were going to receive the inheritance is they were going to sell these really old buildings, massive, expensive, like several $100 million worth buildings, right? In Germany, and then the proceeds go to the heirs. There were a lot of heirs, right? Because these are like the great grandkids. And so each child's proceeds was going to end up being around $10 million, something like that, 10, 15 million. All right. What happened in this scenario? Well, what happened was in Germany, they have some special rules that if the property's been owned for longer than 10 years, you don't have to pay capital gains tax or something like that, right? So when it's being received by the heirs that, were here in the United States, one particular that was in the state of California where there's CALA taxation, right? They were going to receive all of the taxes all at once because none of the taxes were being paid somewhere else. And with that, the deferred sales trust was a fantastic solution to help him receive that asset in the name of the deferred sales trust and not receive it personally, and to not have to declare taxes on that huge inheritance. He was able to take the funds and then reinvest in other assets here in the States. And it was a happy story, right? In your scenario, Jake, more than likely, there are going to need to be taxes paid in that country when the asset is sold. And that is what happens in Germany too, except under this circumstance that we had. When taxes are paid somewhere else, there is a foreign income tax credit that applies to the US taxes. So we have to measure the utility of utilizing this strategy. At the end of the day, we can't really control what another country charges and taxes, right? But what comes into the state and then is taxed here that might be offset by taxes paid somewhere else, we have to then measure, is that enough tax paying to implement the deferred sales trust? And depending on how much taxes were paid there, if they only had to pay 5% tax there, which almost never is the case, by the way, then it still makes a lot of sense to use the deferred sales trust here. If over there in the other country, in South Africa, wherever, they ended up paying more taxes there than we would have even here. Let's say they paid 30% over there. Then we probably may not even need to consider using the deferred sales trust here with all of those tax credits coming over and offsetting taxes here. That becomes a little bit more of a complicated analysis between the federal taxes, capital gains tax rate, potential income taxes that might have as an additional ramification of selling foreign assets, as well as state income taxes. But that's why we're here, right, Jake? I mean, you ask these questions because you've got a client with a situation just like that, and everybody's situation is a little bit different. Essentially, what we need to know and understand about the deferred sales trust, that if the tax paying is significant enough from selling a capital asset in the United States or somewhere else, if you're a United States resident and you have to pay taxes on it eventually, and it comes back to you, it all flows to you from wherever else in the world, but it flows to you and you receive income here and you have to pay taxes here. Well, we might be able to defer the recognition of that transaction forward. And we might be able to reinvest the gross proceeds, not the net proceeds minus taxes, but the gross proceeds of the sale, minus maybe some attorney fees, and continue to grow our assets and our overall net worth. So that's kind of the goal that we have moving forward with some of these questions. Appreciate the question, Jake. Kind of a fun little entrance into today's discussion. With that being said, let's talk about a deal that we're working on right now. I mean, that was a little bit more of a hypothetical, but Jake, do you have a deal on the table that you want to bring up, or should I pull one out of the bag?
Well, I got quite a few that I'm working on right now. I think the biggest thing is getting people to realize that there's more than just a 1031 exchange when it comes to real estate. And number two, most people don't understand or realize that they have a capital gains deferral option when it comes to selling a business. I've got a situation in Oregon where it's very unique property. The current tenant has put $4 million into the property voluntarily, by the way, and is expecting to get a $4 million credit off of his original value that he thought the property was worth 5 years ago. And the three brothers that own the property are trying to work through the psychological aspect of how are we going to break the news to him that the $4 million that he voluntarily put in isn't going to be a credit that comes off of a hypothetical value 5 years ago. So anyway, that is a current situation that I'm working on. It's located in Oregon, and it's about a $17 to $20 million sale.
If the clients didn't consider a strategy like this, Jake, what would their tax ramification be? I mean, do you have that calculated out?
Yeah, so let me just take a quick look at that. Okay, let's just say 20 million. All right, most people think capital gains tax to top of 20%. When you factor everything in, Obamacare and this, that, and the other, it's really about 30%, right? Somewhere around there.
And the numbers there, we got the 20% federal capital gains tax rate. We have the 3.8% Medicare tax. Plus, in that particular state, we have state income tax because they don't have a state capital gains tax. They don't have a preferential rate like that. The state just charges income as income.
Yes, so we're looking at usually 30 to 35%. On a conservative side, I'll just say 30. So that's $6 million tax bill. And a lot of times the fear is with this family is that they have $20 million tied up in one asset. They're very non-diversified when it comes to if the market or the economy affects this one building or this one business, it represents a significant loss because they're so concentrated in just that one asset. It is a very, very big concern with this family. So now we have a situation where we've got folks that feel like now is a good time to sell. They don't want to use a 1031 exchange because property values are high. So that if they use a 1031, they're going to buy high and they're going to sell high and they're going to buy high. But they would like to sell, defer the capital gains, take some time to decide what they want to do, diversify out across different asset classes, and create some income in the meantime. So the deferred sales trust is a really good, and they're all very, very high net worth. So we're looking at other tax issues like federal estate taxes, state estate taxes, and other tax implications as well. So they need something that can work with their estate plan. They need something that can work to give them more options, give them a more diverse stance or position within their different asset classes that they can invest in, not have to go back into like kind property, not have to buy in high after they've sold high. And they're really liking this. And the CPA, and incidentally, and Jake, you and I both know this, and probably Micah as well from all the cases we've worked on. With you as a strategic partner, when you start getting the tax attorney like Jake Pfeiffer in front of their CPA, the CPA kind of, once they get their head wrapped around it, becomes a big supporter of it as well. Then you get more referrals from the CPA because they see the power of what this can do for their clients. So I said a lot, but that is that's kind of in a nutshell kind of what some of the situation that we're dealing with that case.
Very good. Well, I'm going to share one more deal story, a current deal story of the week that we discussed literally 2 days ago. And then we're going to jump into a little Q&A. All right. So these clients are in Texas, wonderful state of Texas, no income tax in Texas. Fantastic, right? They have a 7 million multifamily building. And they're selling it obviously right now for about 7.3, whatever. Let's just say 7 to make the number easy, right? They're selling it for 7. Their basis in the property, their adjusted basis after cost segregation and depreciation, different things like that, is $2 million. There's a little monkey wrench in the mix here that they have 2.5 million in debt. All right. So this presents an additional tax problem. It's called a debt over basis issue, debt over basis or mortgage over basis. So again, as we talked about earlier on, everybody's situation is a little bit different, right? We're able to swoop in with the deferred sales trust and help them sell the property without paying any taxes on the capital gains. However, here, because of the debt over basis, we have another tax ramification where that money, where they received debt or they received a loan above and beyond what their basis is, if we were to wipe that out with the sale of the property, they would owe taxes on that economic benefit. How is that an economic benefit? Well, their capitalization of their money in, or their original capital that they put into the property, has been adjusted down to $2 million. Yet at some point, they took additional loans out against the property, use it as collateral to, maybe, as all serial entrepreneurs do, borrow from one to invest in the other, right? When you do that though, and then you sell the first properties, if you wipe away more debt than you literally put into the property, that's an economic benefit. That's, well, for tax purposes, when that happens, that's considered income to you and could be subject to ordinary income tax rates, right? So $7 million, 2 million basis, that's a cap gain of 5, right? Cap gain of 5. But now we've got an additional capital gains of 5 plus 500,000 of additional debt over basis that needs to be counted as income. So 5 million that is subject to capital gains plus another 500,000 on top of the sell that is considered ordinary income. And so additional tax ramifications here. Right now, their decision is, do I pay down some of the debt before the sell? Do I pay down some of the debt so that it matches up 2 million to 2 million? They can do that. Or do I sell, but do I use another financial tool and instrument called the Delaware Statutory Trust Fund to roll over that 500,000 of debt plus a little bit of cash? So I have to sacrifice some money to go into like a zero coupon Delaware Statutory Trust Fund that can absorb that debt, a financial tool that accepts debt. Many people don't know that that exists. It does. And just for purposes just like this. So we can do a partial 1031 into a Delaware Statutory Trust Fund with the 500,000 of debt plus a little bit of equity, and then the other 7 million sell, right? The 5 million gain that they normally have to pay taxes on. All of that cash can go into the deferred sales trust, and they can reinvest it in other multifamily. They can reinvest in the stock market. They also want to reinvest in an IT company, and they want to invest in some apartments outside of the country. All of that is possible with the deferred sales trust if you do it in the right way, which, in order for you to do it in the right way, we have the tax attorneys, we have myself, we have Brett Swartz, we have Jake Carpenter, we have a lot of the people here on the call today that can help guide you through each step based on your specific circumstance and what is necessary for you to utilize this as a financial tool in your tax planning.
Jake, I think it's important to comment about the audit protection that you get with the deferred sales trust. and the monetary obligation upfront, which is 0.
So interestingly enough, I mean, how many of us out there, I don't know about you, I think I've paid probably $20,000 to various attorneys over the last 2 months. And they all want a retainer up front before they do any work. That's not the case here. With the deferred sales trust, it's conditional. You have a conditional agreement with them, which means you actually don't pay anything. They can set up the trust. They can work with you and your attorneys. They can work with a purchase agreement. They can put in new language so that everything is kosher. And at the end of the day, at the 11th hour, whatever, if you decide to back out, no harm, no foul, no money owed, right? There are very few attorneys in the world that'll work on a conditional basis based on whether or not you actually, on the condition that you actually fund the deferred sales trust and don't decide just to pay the taxes. Why do they do that? Well, most of the time when people are educated, when they get in front of this with enough time, I mean, they just do it. So it's not like they're really out or missing out on anything. Plus, most of the people are educating, such as ourselves, on this strategy. We get the client far enough along, but by the time they sit in front of the tax attorney, they're ready to go, right? The other thing that Micah brought up, really important to know, when you do something like this is perhaps the largest transaction of your life or one of the largest transactions you've ever been through. It's important that if you are, especially if you found out about this kind of late and you're kind of like rushing and you've got like 2 weeks to get this done, 2 weeks is not enough time to get educated and know all the answers. But you have the assurance that the law firm behind the strategy provides lifetime auto protection. And what does that mean? So I had an interesting experience being the back office for a large national association of CPA firm owners, and I had to vet strategies. And I had to know and understand the difference of what some people mean when they say lifetime auto protection. It does not mean that they have an insurance policy that will kick in to pay for some attorney somewhere that doesn't even know you from Adam or Eve to represent you. That's not what that means. Here in this scenario, the very law firm that founded this strategy 26 years ago and has defended it before the IRS on a variety of occasions and is currently batting 1,000, meaning that they've never lost. They have 100% track record with the IRS defending this strategy. They are the individuals who will personally represent you, hold your hand, and be in front of the IRS, between the IRS and you, should there ever be an issue. Sometimes it's not that there are issues, but if your transaction is big enough, to kind of give a few more details, there was a deal in California, $120 million sky-rise condo apartment building. California wanted to audit them. The federal government wanted to audit them. Everybody wanted a piece of the pie because because we're very transparent, they saw all the details of the transaction, $120 million. And there was a sale, ownership changed. That should be taxed. But it wasn't. And it didn't have to be. In a very short period of time, I don't know if any of you have ever worked with IRS or the federal government, but when there's a deep dive audit, does it get cleared up in 2 months, 2 to 3 months, with 0 findings and 0 changes? That just doesn't happen, right? But it did in this scenario because this strategy is so ironclad that the IRS agent, the senior IRS agent behind the audit, couldn't do anything other than just say, hey, this works. Yes, no taxes are owed right now. And so these stories are just here, and the testimonials in the very beginning of the show today are all here just to give you a little bit of peace of mind that there are thousands of trusts out there, billions of dollars under new management after the sales transaction, and over 26 years running with a perfect track record. So,
Jake, I think you should talk a little bit about what it takes to be a trustee as well, because not everyone can be a trustee, and you can't have, your mother-in-law or your brother or your friend or somebody else be a trustee. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if anybody else, Brett, are you here now? I don't think Brett's gotten off the plane yet. I was going to pick on him because he is a trustee, right? So very few people actually meet the qualifications of being a trustee, and that's important for the tax deferral part of this strategy. It can't be your brother, can't be your mother, can't be somebody that you've had control over before, can't be your current financial advisor, can't be somebody who's been your employee, can't be your brother-in-law, can't be your cousin, your uncle, your best friend at your wedding. Well, I mean, under normal circumstances, it can't be these people. It needs to be somebody, a true, unbiased, third-party individual that can be considered somebody separate from you for tax, legal, and financial matters. Somebody who has who can be a true fiduciary of the assets of the trust, which means doing what's in the best interest of, the funds there in reinvesting them and providing all of these different things. If you were to use the best man at your wedding, or if you were to use your brother, your uncle, your cousin, whatever, that could be construed as too close, not arm's length. And it could be construed that you have power and decision-making authority over all of the assets of the trust with no contingencies or no barrier in between. And if there's no barrier, that means you've taken constructive receipt, and that means you owe taxes. So in order to not owe taxes, we need that other person. We need, when the IRS, if they ever take a look at this strategy, we need them to look at a trustee, not to look at you. Because if they look at you, well, I mean, that's the attention we're trying to avoid by doing all of this, right? Did that answer the question, Micah? You're on mute, by the way.
Yes, that is absolutely what I was wanting to say. But in addition to, some people might also be concerned, I guess, that, okay, what can I trust Brett Schwartz? Can I trust this trustee who is now in charge of my asset? I am the note holder, but how do I feel confident that he will do what I instruct him to do?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Brett Schwartz. Since he's not here at the moment, let's talk behind his back and say a few things. Rebecca, I want to hear from you. Who is Brett Schwartz? And I want to hear about the person, not just that he's a trustee.
He's somebody that has done hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of training on the deferred sales trust.
He hit the 10,000 hour requirement to be a professional in any one thing, like way back in 2009, right?
Yeah, right. So he's that. He is somebody that follows the rules, has been, but is a person that will listen to what you want to do, but abide by the rules of the deferred sales trust.
Or in another way, he liberates the client, helping them find solutions to do what they wish to do, keeping them within the guardrails, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
But let me add a few more things. Brett Schwartz is a husband. He is a father. He's a nice guy. He has this hair, not quite like mine, but pretty good hair, right? And he has been a fiduciary for a lot of different trusts over the years. And there's no reason why he'd ever do anything that could possibly take that away from him. Meaning he's never going to do something that he shouldn't do with the client's money because there's additional protocols in place to where he can't, right? Like there's a dual signature thing on any money movements. We handle a lot of the money and the assets that are in marketable securities, or what we call opportunity money, meaning it's sitting somewhere like in treasury bills, making 5%, what have you, until that big real estate deal becomes available, right? So we all work together as a team, and it's very transparent. It's very transparent for a lot of different reasons. We never want to get accused of doing something that's not in the best interest of the funds of the trust or of the client, right? At the same time, we're always working hand in hand with the client. We like to say that Brett Schwartz is kind of like the COO. He's in charge of operations. He's the trustee. The clients are still the CEO. A lot of the information that the rest of the team is receiving, it comes from the clients. Clients want to invest in real estate. Clients want to invest in crypto. Clients want to invest in all these different things. And we bring to the table some of the best options available. And then we all discuss it. At the end of the day, we typically do what the CEO wants. But Brett Schwartz as the COO does it, and myself as the CFO, I talk a lot about numbers, right? And we try to make sure that it all makes sense. And then, of course, we bring in other subject matter experts like Jake Carpenter, like JC, like Micah, and a lot of other people that come on these meetings every single week, especially Rebecca if we're in the Lake Tahoe area. And so that's a little bit more about Brett Schwartz. Go ahead, Micah. I didn't answer everything.
No, you did. Whenever you talk, it brings up more things that I think we need to make sure that people are aware of. So, I mean, if you're on the call for the first time and you're saying, well, this is kind of neat, I can talk to an attorney, I can talk to the trustee, I can talk to a financial planner. How is it that you can do this all at no obligation up front? So we need to talk about what does make sense for the minimum purchase or the minimum sell price, but also what the fees are when that goes through and why it makes sense at those rates.
So I think there's about 5 questions there. Let's unpack that a little bit. Okay. So first and foremost, Jake Carpenter, what makes a home run deal where it's just like a no-brainer? What do we need for it to be a no-brainer that a deferred sales trust is a financial tool that works in that type of scenario?
You need to have a transaction that is $1 million or more, that is also subject to capital gains at $1 million or more. So if your transaction is $1 million sale, it needs to be in a situation where all $1 million is subject to capital gains tax. Or if it's a $2 million sale, again, there needs to be $1 million of that sale price that is subject to capital gains tax. So if you got a sale that's $2 million, but you only have $300,000 that's subject to capital gains tax, that is not going to qualify for the deferred sales trust, because we want this strategy to work not just for us, but for you, the person that's selling. So in order for this to be a home run and not a single, we need to have $1 million in the transaction subject to capital gains.
Right. So
Or
$1
we
million
have-
over basis, right?
We need to have a mix, maybe 500 and 500, and those 2 sales are all subject to capital gains tax totaling $1 million.
Very good. Now, Rebecca, you unmuted yourself twice. So help us know what's up. What are we missing here?
So it also works for on the residential real estate side. It also works for somebody who's selling their primary residence. But you know,
So in that example, so like with Jake,
Yeah.
we said $1 million over basis, right?
Yep.
In your example, well, $1 million over basis or other exemptions, because
Right.
there is the married filing joint up to 500,000 of gain on a personal residence that you don't have to be taxed on, right? So
Exactly.
it doesn't make a whole, I mean, it's not a home run on a personal residence unless it's $1 million over basis or $1.5 million over basis because of that 500,000 exemption.
Right. Right. But it also works for, in like my market, it works for second homeowners who haven't necessarily rented their property out. So it's not necessarily an investment property. It still works for them as well. So, because they don't have a lot of options.
Right. If you
They don't
live
have-
there, or if it's been your second home, et cetera, it's not eligible for 1031. Or
Right.
people that have property, or people selling a business, or any of these other things that are not real estate related, or not the physical tangible building part, then, you know, some of these other strategies that get oversold on way too many occasions just don't work. Okay, well, very good. So again, to recap, answering the first of the 5 questions there, we have a home run deal, $1 million of capital gains because it's $1 million over basis on the sale of any highly appreciated asset, right? That makes it for a home run. Does it have to be $1 million? Well, it doesn't. It really doesn't. But why $1 million? Well, if it's $1 million over adjusted basis, that's over $200,000 in the federal capital gains tax alone. And it could be subject to another 3.8 of the Medicare tax. And it could be subject to additional state income tax. But as a rule of thumb across all the possible things that could be sold out there, you know, it's just easy to say $1 million, right? $1 million, 20%, 200,000. That's enough tax pain or tax flow in the wrong direction that we want to mitigate that we're willing to talk to a team of people, that we're willing to get educated, that we're willing to invest time to save $200,000. And then of course, everything above that is easy. It's an easy decision to say that this works, this makes sense. As long as the other caveat that I'd say, not only does it need to be the size of the transaction that matters. Some people say that, well, anyway, I'm not going to go there. That it's also really important what you plan to use the proceeds of the sale for. Okay, so the 2 things that anybody, if they just want to, like if we just wanted a quick and dirty, hey, does this make sense for you? Size of your transaction, what you plan to use the proceeds for. A lot of people that we talk to, they don't want to have to pay taxes right now. That's fantastic. But if they want to use the gross proceeds, all of the proceeds, just to go spend on a nice Lamborghini so that they look cool and buy another house that they can live in for personal purposes, and that they can go on this 364-day cruise ship and just live on a cruise ship for the next year, whatever. I mean, these things are not reinvestment purposes. This is a business trust and must be reinvested for business purposes. And so again, size of the transaction over $1 million of above adjusted basis, and that you plan to reinvest these assets. You can reinvest them in the market, you can reinvest them in businesses, you can reinvest them in real estate, you can reinvest them in a lot of things that are considered reinvestment purposes that are not personal in nature. So you can reinvest it in that duplex or that apartment, but not in that second home, if that makes sense. Now, Micah, that was 2 out of the 5, and I don't remember the last 3.
I want to know how much you pay on that $1 million that you're going to put into it.
What are the fees? Okay. Well, Rebecca has $1 million smile, so that goes to her.
Yeah, it goes to me.
Happy
So
birthday.
there's a one-time fee for the tax attorney, which I believe is 1 3/4%.
It's 1.5 on the first $1 million.
Oh,
And this
that's
is-
right. Yeah.
This is kind of funny and it's a little confusing. 1.5% on the first $1 million of the transaction, of the total transaction, and then 1.25. So it decreases a little bit. So anything above the first $1 million, there's a little discount, right? So 1.25 on all the money after the first $1 million.
Okay. And then the fees, there's annual fees for the trustee and the management of the funds, and that's between 1 3/4 and 2%.
Yes, and that also, there's some negotiation there that happens just depending on the size of the deal and how much money is actually being managed, everything else. This is not off of the gross proceeds, but this is off of what is actually being managed and where it's being managed. But at no time does it ever exceed 2% combined trustee financial advisor fee, right? And then of course we have the famous Brett Swartz. Where are you calling in from today? It looks like an airport.
Yeah, I just landed in Orlando, here in the free state of Florida, and just coming back from Salt Lake City, Utah. So it was a amazing commercial real estate conference, and met with some amazing people and learned from some really smart people. I like to say made some friends and influenced some people, and I also had a chance to learn a lot.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Brett, but I'm going to give you like 2 or 3 seconds to think about it. I want to know the top 1, 2, or 3 takeaways from your conference in Utah, which is my home state.
Yeah, so I think number 1, there's been a lot of commercial real estate syndicators, and we've been saying this for years. Be very careful not to overpay for properties, and you could argue they didn't overpay if it was a year and a half ago, knowing what they knew. But at the same time, these adjustable rate mortgages, they didn't have rate caps, or they're exceeding their caps. There's going to be some real right, for some that didn't stick to the fundamentals of the underwriting, and really interest rates. I can't say it's a black swan. I mean, when they pumped so much money into the system a couple years ago during COVID, we anticipated
Brett, I'm gonna interrupt you there real fast, Brett. You're cutting out on us pretty hard. So as soon as you get to where you're going, chime back in. For the moment, I think we should open it up for questions, because we are actually past our 35-minute mark. And so we're a little bit 10 minutes past, because we've had some really good questions from some of the contributors here on the call. But I'd like to open up to the group. We've got Kathy, we've got Dell, we've got Giles, we've got Alessandra. We've got a few people here that I looks like you might be here in this group for the first time, or maybe you've come before, but I'd like to open it up. If you have any questions, we'll pay attention to, we'll give you the attention that you deserve here on this live call. And not everyone all at once. If needed, I can also pick on people.
Nah, give him a minute to think.
Okay, well, just letting everybody
I mean,
know.
this could be your deal. It could be a deal you're working with someone else, you know?
Right, and so of course, real life deals, if you have questions about something that's happening right now, that always is a little easier to talk about because it's more relevant, as well as specific details get more specific answers. That's kind of the rule of thumb that we also have. Meanwhile, Rebecca, I think that we've been talking a little bit about some of the deals that you've seen in the past, but do you have any deals coming up here in the near future that you'd like to talk about?
You know, gosh, none in the near future, but I mean, I'm always looking for those $10-20 million lakefront listings. People that have owned the properties and for a long time that are thinking about selling, especially after the winter we've had in the Tahoe area.
So for a luxury home realtor,
yeah,
I'm going to make a few comments and tell me if I'm spot on or if I'm a little bit off in left field. Sometimes it's very beneficial to have in your tool belt things that help clients overcome their most common objections on listing or selling their home. You just told us that you're always on the lookout for those $20 million homes that people are looking to sell because you want to represent the listing and you want to help them sell, right?
Right.
And of course, the biggest expense that most of us ever have in all of our lifetime, typically revolve around taxes. So if you can help them list that property and maybe motivate them to list it now rather than later, because their most common objection might be trying to avoid, or they're just not ready for that biggest expense of their life, which are the taxes. What I'm getting at here is the deferred sales trust a tool in your quiver or an arrow in your quiver that allows you to help people list properties faster?
it is. It definitely is.
Because
it's
it
definitely a
addresses their
tool.
biggest problem, right?
Yes, it is. It's especially in this area, homes, the average home price is $1 million and above. I mean, people are, to get a decent home in the area, you have to be able to, pay $1.5 million, I would say, to get a nice home in the area. And so when you're looking at selling a property that you've owned for 5, 10, 15 years, because you've been able to live through the appreciation of COVID, of, a number of different things, then there's definitely opportunities for people to utilize the deferred sales trust in looking to sell and maybe move out of the area. Maybe they're ready to get rid of their investment property. Maybe they are tired of shoveling and trying to get, out of the snow after this winter. You never know. And I'm sure there's somebody else who wants to be here for the snow and the lovely weather. But yeah, it's definitely a tool.
There you go. Well, I have some friends that have a property down there in the Lake Tahoe area, and they've been loving the snow. They've been posting pictures every single day. These are people from Hawaii, and
Wow.
they come to Lake Tahoe for this season to ski and snowboard.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because those of us, I've lived in the area for 30 years and I'm a little tired of shoveling, but it's wonderful. It's an amazing skiing. It's a great place to live, but it's raining right now. So.
Well, anyway, no, that's very good to know. So maybe you don't have an existing project right now, but you're on the lookout for those $20 million homes. And of course, if you can help them sell that home any quicker, any better, any faster, the deferred sales trust is one of your tools that helps them pull the trigger, helps them make that decision, because now they have a solution to one of their biggest hesitations, which is that of taxes.
Exactly.
Now we have a question from Dale. Dale, if you want, you can open up your mic, or I can read your question from the chat box. And it looks like here. What about short-term gains on real estate with over 1 million in gain? Dell, whether it's short-term gains or long-term gains, internally we do things a little bit different, but the solution or the result is the same. You are able to defer the recognition of the sales transaction now. Think of it similarly to like a 401k, in the sense that there's this 401k wrapper around the transactions, or there's this business trust around the transactions. Everything that happens inside, as long as it doesn't come out, you don't owe taxes on right away. And so it's a deferral vehicle. Inside of a 401k, you might buy Apple, buy Google, sell Google, buy Coca-Cola, sell Coca-Cola. And each time you're buying and selling and changing from one asset to another, you're not recognizing that transaction for tax purposes. Now that's an oversimplification, But to answer your question, it doesn't matter if you hold it less than a year or more than a year, short-term capital gains or long-term capital gains, you are able to defer that with the deferred sales trust. I hope that answers that question. That was a good question.
I would like to point out one thing too, is that if you have this asset and you sell, well, you don't have to put everything from the sale into the deferred sales trust. You can take a distribution, you can take a note right up front, and then you can even have it scheduled, say, I want to start my distributions and I want to receive in a certain amount in the future. So it's really pretty pliable, pretty moldable and flexible. That's what I was trying to say.
Very good. Appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. JC, I think this is your first time on the call, or first or second. Can you tell us your thoughts about what you've heard today? You are a tax preparer, tax consultant. You're a people person, and you like to dive into the details so that you can help explain people things that can help them. What do you think about the deferred sales trust so far?
It sounds like a very unknown strategy that most small business owners may not have heard of. And so I think that the information that you've given today gives someone the ease and comfort of knowing that this is something that they might be able to utilize to help build their generational wealth going forward.
Absolutely. And of course, some of these things that are lesser known or mysterious to some people might just be, it's not something they do every day, right? We talked about Brett Swartz. We talked about Brett Swartz, how in the beginning, like way back in 2008, 2009, he achieved the 10,000 hour requirement to be a professional in anything. Like they have a funny little thing out there. It's just a saying, right? But in order to be a true professional at anything, whether it's professional athlete, professional artist, professional whatever, you need at least 10,000 hours. And of course, he hit that check box. He checked that box, a long time ago, right? So when clients are facing this one time in their life transaction or something that they don't face every day, it might be that they and their team of professionals that they've always worked with on everything else haven't seen this before. They haven't done it before. And that's why you need to reach out to somebody like us that have met this requirement for 10,000 hours in this very thing so that we can help them, so that we can bring to the table as subject matter experts what they need to know to make a wise decision.
So I want to point out that there are certain strategies that are employed by people if they are a business owner or if they're an individual. They might not have as many opportunities available to them. But the deferred sales trust is one that is open to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner, if you're a W-2 employee, it doesn't matter as long as you have whatever that inheritance you receive or that crypto that you sell or that home that you sell, whatever the case may be, it isn't exclusive to just business owners, which is pretty amazing.
That's right. We had that question just the other day. Somebody was saying, hey, I'm not like all these business owners you work with. It's just me. I mean, I have these assets. Am I eligible? Well, yeah, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. It's what you have, what you're selling. If it's a capital asset, something that could cause a capital gain tax situation, typically we can use the deferred sales trust to help move that asset into cash or what have you, and not incur the taxes for this year. We even have people who have paintings that were in the family since forever ago that decide to sell the painting. And they might be a normal blue collar sheriff's deputy in the state of California, but they got this painting that's worth $20 million. Big difference. Never in their life could they have ever earned so much money. But at the same time, they don't want to spend so much in taxes. They don't want to lose half of that in taxes, right? So there's definitely a better way to transition assets into cash than just selling them and paying the taxes. And one of those is the deferred sales trust.
Hey, Jake, I have a question, and I'm not sure if maybe you've answered this in this video, but I've heard this come up on a replay. And that question is, what is the timing necessary to get in contact with you in order to set up one of these deferred sales trusts? If I've sold or made a sale in 2022, are we able to go back, or do I need to contact you prior to making the sale?
That's a really important distinction. The trust must be set up prior to the sale. And not just prior to the sale, it has to, and this is kind of a funny legal terminology or whatever, but it has to be before all contingencies of the sale are released. Meaning if somebody can knock on the door and demand the asset, even if money hasn't transferred, whatever, if all contingencies have been released and money's promised at certain dates or whatever, but they are now owed the asset, then it's too late, right? So when you start getting into the process of like a letter of intent or you're negotiating the deal and it looks promising, get us in the mix as soon as you can. We love having 2 or 3 months to educate people and to meet with all their advisors and to meet with everybody that's important to them in making this decision so that everybody's on the same page and everybody knows the same stuff. However, we did pull off a record a couple months ago. We landed a deal literally in 3 days. That's the fastest I've ever done. But everything was together and organized and ready to go. And I'm not suggesting that we do that, but I'm suggesting that it's important. This is not a retroactive thing. This is, you get this in front of the sale of whatever capital asset that you're selling in time for all parties to be in the know. One of the other things that we don't want to do is if, hey, the sale is it's gonna close tomorrow. Everybody's gonna go sign the agreement tomorrow, and we start changing the contracts today to include the option to use the deferred sales trust as the recipient of the asset that's then selling it to the buyer. Well, anytime you change the paperwork the day before the sale, everybody's alarms go up, red flags go up everywhere. Everybody gets concerned. So, I mean, we can still do that, but as a matter of prudence and respect, if nothing else, we like to make sure that all parties know and understand that, hey, there's a trust involved in the sale of this asset, which is common, whether it's a family trust, an irrevocable trust, or this business trust known as the deferred sales trust. It's common, but that it be in front of the deal from the beginning, right? That's preferred. But of course, we've stepped into every stage of the deal and have had success implementing the deferred sales trust to where I can't say that we've ever not been able to do the deferred sales trust because of something on our side. But again, even though we will bend over backwards to help you, we would recommend that the earlier you get in and the earlier you start having these conversations, the better it is for all parties involved in the deal.
Just because there's a purchase and sale agreement doesn't mean it's too late. Again, it's all contingencies have to be removed and the deal has to not be closed because there's something called constructive receipt. So if you're wondering, call Jake, call one of the strategic partners, call Brett. If you're wondering, there's an evaluation process to make sure it's not too late. But you do, like Jake said, the sooner the better.
All right. Well, wonderful. I think that's all we have for today. We're actually almost over on time. Jake Carpenter, if people want to reach you or if they want to contact you and ask you questions, how do they reach out?
You can call me at 509-460-8700 or email at jake@carpenter.capital. That is jake@carpenter.capital.
Very good. Rebecca, if somebody's in the Lake Tahoe area and they have one of those $20 million homes or they know somebody that does, how do they reach out to you?
They can call me at 530-448-9740 or email me at rebecca@rebeccamunson.com.
Of course, for Strategic Tax Solutions, which is my company, I work with Brett Swartz, who has Capital Gains Tax Solutions. If you'd like to reach out to either of us, we both have websites, as well as we both have a calendar link on each of our websites. In addition, we have an 800 number, 1-800-773-1848. And again, that website is strategictaxsolutions.com. Feel free to give us a call and we can help you analyze your specific scenario to find out if we would recommend the deferred sales trust to you. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining us today on Friday. And for those who are viewing us later, don't forget to like and subscribe. Talk soon.